My name's Erica Faulkner. I use she, her pronouns. I am on the Ward 2 Neighborhood Planning Association Assembly Steering Committee. We're going to start our meeting now. I want to start off by asking for an approval of the minutes. Yes. Can I have a second? Do we normally? Okay. Amazing. Awesome. All those in favor? Amazing. Sweet. All those opposed? Cool. We're good. Okay, awesome. And then I'm going to do a quick introductions of our current steering committee members. My name's Erica. Over there, we have Kaysen and we have Lauren. And that's our steering committee right now. And so now I wanted to roll into public forum. So everyone can have 2 minutes maximum per person. When you are speaking for public forum, please state your full name, your pronouns, your street and ward, just so we know who's talking. Okay. Would anyone like to start with announcements? Sweet.
I have 3 announcements. Just so everybody knows, there's coffee and tea in the back. Please help yourself as you listen in. It's a great day for coffee. Second, my name is Lauren, as you all now know. I live on North Ave, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a member of the BRV. You all should have gotten your ballots by now if you are a registered voter in Burlington. If you have not gotten your ballot, please contact the city clerk's office. And please remember to vote, whether it is early, in person, however you choose to vote. Please remember to do it. November 5th is the last day to do that. And then I'll hold off for my other one.
Would anyone else like to make an announcement? Okay. Remember your name, pronouns, and ward.
Okay. Hello, my name is Wesley Koo. Pronoun he, him, street, North Avenue, and Ward 2. So a couple of friends and I from who are living in Old North End are performing with the Lyric Theater at an upcoming show, Newsies, the musical. It will be in November 14 to 17. We have a total of 6 shows. It's family friendly. And the reason why I like this show is because it is about children workers who are striking against big corporations. And I think that is a very nice message for me. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
Was there somebody else? What? Was there somebody else?
Hi, I'm Megan Humphrey, she, her pronouns, and I live on St. Louis Street. And I have a couple of announcements. One is there are little flyers over on the welcome table about the One Mutual Aid, and that's an organization that was developed during COVID, just as there was one in Winooski, which has run out of people power and money and everything, but there's still one that's very vibrant in the Old North End. So please take a slip. They are looking for all kinds of help all the time. They're looking for folks to be on the board and to help with some fundraising. And if you get on their email, they will send you what the needs are periodically. So sometimes it's people that are looking for a tent because they have to camp outside, or help with grocery money or something like that. The other thing is that the downtown has put together a security and safety guide, and I only have one other one, but it's over on the table. And this is really helpful in terms of situations that you might not necessarily need to call the police. So there are a whole, they explain the issues that you might need a different organization or business to call. So that's a really good thing to get a handle on. Brian, it's probably on a website somewhere, right?
Just for those on Zoom, Brian confirmed yes.
Yep. Okay. So it's on a city website somewhere as well. That was at a meeting earlier. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other announcements? Yes.
Thanks, Erica. Brian Pine, I'm with CETO. I live in Ward 2. It's hard to remember it because I spent so many years in Ward 3. But hold this event if you're interested in the South End coordinated redevelopment, which is just a long way of saying sort of repurposing those parking lots that sit around the old plant that is the Innovation Center and across the road. It's had cars parking. Hundreds of cars for decades have been parking there, and now it's going to become something totally different. So it's a community sort of forum, open house at Hula on the 24th of October at 5:30. My notes say it goes for 3 hours, which seems awfully long, but it may be that. So please, if you're interested, more information will be on the city's website, but it is the Thursday, the 24th of October at 5:30 at Hula. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay.
Hello, it's Lauren again. I am making two announcements on behalf of two other organizations that reached out to the steering committee. So bear with me 1 minute while I open up on my phone. So the CCRPC, as well as the Parks and Rec Department, Waterfront, DPW, and VHB, that is a lot of different acronyms. I can offline tell you what they all mean if you need it. They're getting underway with a scoping and feasibility study of the Vermont 127 path, so the Beltline. So as part of this effort, they are looking to establish a project advisory group, and they would like someone from Ward 2 to be part of that because it does run through Ward 2. So if anyone is interested in that, it will be, I have a rough idea of work. There are typically meetings that are 1.5 hours long, once a month. I think there will be a total of 4 meetings over the course of the next year or so. So if you would like more information or if you're interested in this role, please come find me, Lauren. I have way more information, but wanted to stay within my 2 minutes. And my other public forum is that the REIB, so the Equity and, I can't do the acronyms today. REIB also has an empowerment fund, which is aiming to promote equity, access, and empowerment for Black and brown communities in Burlington. So they are seeking applications for a grant. And again, if you are interested or know someone who is, you can reach out to either me directly tonight or the steering committee email, and we can get you more information on that.
Amazing, thank you. Any other public forum comments?
So, does anybody know what ward this building is in? 3. And what ward is everyone here from? 2. Wow, we're happen to be sort of some conjoined group by one way or another, aren't we? Can't avoid it. So last month, I made a plea for the community to reach out to rejoin wards 2 and 3 in this meeting setting, which apparently got split somehow. I didn't know at the time, but I've talked to Amy, who is extremely knowledgeable and informed me of a lot of the shenanigans that went on. Some of it good, some of it bad, but I think we're trying to reunify in a positive fashion with an outcome which benefits both wards. Because again, in my humble opinion, wards 2 and 3 deserve and command a lot of respect in the city. We are not only a progressive stronghold, but we're a stronghold of smart and intelligent women. And here is one now.
That's a heck of a way to put me on the spot. All right, now I have to say something nice for Patrick? Where should I start?
Amy, can you introduce yourself? Just
Can
to
I
keep
what?
with.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Amy Prenowitz. I'm in Ward 3 down on Johnson Street. I use she, her pronouns, and am I missing anything?
I think that was it.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
There were certain members of Ward 3, and most of the people here are either Ward 2 or otherwise. There were certain people in Ward 3 who felt that that the issues that they had as a ward, or that we had as a ward, were not being addressed at the Ward 2-3 meetings and at the Ward 2 and 3 steering committee meetings. And I think the main reason for this, that was one reason to split into two groups. And the main thing that was pushing that, I believe, was that when you think of Ward 3 is now this side of North Street, so the south side of North Street, and this is since the wards got redrawn with the census. So we begin on North Street and go down to Pearl. We include all of the downtown, so everybody who lives on top of any of those buildings downtown, and we include King and Maple, and then we go over and hop over and we have people at the waterfront in those, I don't know if they're condominiums or apartments or whatever, but those things. So that's Ward 3 as of now. 2/3 of that, if not more, never come to the meetings. I don't think they come to the meetings because either they don't know about them because we don't get any word out to them, because they don't live in the neighborhood, so to speak, or because they don't feel comfortable. Because we have a not exactly homogenous group, but it tends that way. And there's people out there who don't feel comfortable coming here. I know that because I've talked to them. I might say it anyway, but I did talk to them, or they talked to me. And that's one of the major reasons why we were talking about splitting groups. I think if we can find a way to address the problem, maybe in a small group that meets consistently over time, for somebody suggested for several months, then we could integrate the other people who are not here into this meeting and make it fully a Ward 2 and Ward 3 meeting. That has been the problem at the moment that has split the two of us up. And I think that's a problem. I'm not averse to being together with Ward 2 and 3. That's not my issue, but I will have an issue if we don't address the situation that Ward 3 does include 3 different places other than
Amy,
my
apologies.
stretch.
I have to cut you off because you've run over
I
the
think
2 minute, but
that's
thank you.
done.
Yes. Are there any other announcements for community forum? Yes? Yeah, awesome.
Thanks. I'll comment on this same topic as well. My name is Joe Kane. I am the city councilor for Ward 3. So just to go over what happened, there was a meeting on July 31st where an item for discussion was added to the agenda for discussion to discuss the dissolving the Wards 2, 3 NPA. There was no motion to actually take action. Action was taken. That's improper. The agenda for the meeting did not include this vote. It included a presentation from the police chief. It included some other little things. It was not advertised as a momentous, important decision for residents. I have received nothing but complaints from residents. It is my job to be involved in sorting this out, and that has been time consuming. I do think that we are close to a resolution. I will say that I do expect that this meeting next month will be a Wards 2, 3 NPA meeting, just like all of the other ones, because for various reasons, the vote was invalid. It was invalid. It was a violation of open meeting law, Article 6 of the state constitution. The steering committee acted, in a way that, is unbelievable. It's hard to describe the severity of the breach of public trust, and it's going to take time to restore that trust, and there is going to be a process of certainly doing outreach and making sure that this joint NPA is accessible and that everyone feels comfortable here. And so that is going to be a probably several month to several year-long process, and I look forward to participating in it with any of you all that are interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments for public forum? Yes. Do you have a comment?
Okay, so I'm Charlie G, and I've been involved with the NPAs forever. And I just want to say that we have a problem here in wards 2 and 3 that people all over the world would love to have. We have so much political activity. Okay, so people are passionate about their politics, they're passionate about their neighborhoods, and I'm telling you, that is not a bad thing. That's wonderful. We have an overabundance of that to some extent in the old North End, but so I just welcome the fact that we have so many people that are so interested in politics and community affairs, and I'm sure wards 2 and 3 NPAs will work it out. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments? Are there any comments online?
A monster.
Give us a pause here.
Shooting you guys an email.
Okay, no? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for everyone who presented and who made comments. Really appreciate hearing everyone's perspective. Okay, next on our agenda item, we wanted to make space to see if there are any nominations on the floor for any new Ward 2 NPA steering committee members. I also would like to nominate Charlie G to see if he would like to step forward and come back and serve. Maybe. He might be kind of busy, it's fine. Charlie, are you okay with being nominated to
Yes.
serve? Beautiful, awesome, okay. Are there any other nominations on the floor? You can self-nominate, you can nominate someone. They can accept the nomination or decline, obviously. No? If anyone would like to chat more about the process and don't want to step forward right now, I'm happy to chat with anyone after our meeting about what being on the steering committee entails. It's not a huge lift. It's a really great way to be involved and make sure you're encouraging democracy and discourse within our neighborhood. But yeah, happy to chat with anyone afterwards. And then moving on, we're going to be having a vote for Charlie. Charlie, would you like to say anything before we vote?
I usually say too many things.
I'll keep you short, don't worry.
So again, I've been involved with the NPAs going way back, and so I've seen how they've evolved over the years. And the NPAs are like a blessing for Burlington because it's allowed so many more people to become involved in their local political activity and their local activism. And the NPAs have assisted the city in being as one of the most progressive cities and one of the most progressive states on the planet. So the NPAs have an honorable role in that. So I'm always very happy to be on the steering committee, but I'll tell you right now, I'm already heavily involved in the NPAs. So if we get so many people on the steering committee that it bumps me off, I'd be perfectly happy to be bumped off if there are other people that want to get on, because I'm going to be involved with the NPAs one way or the other. So, but I'm perfectly happy to rejoin the Ward 2 NPA. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, Charlie actually did that for us. We had a younger member who expressed interest, and so he stepped down so that a more youthful voice could step forward, which was really appreciated at the time, and really awesome. Okay, so anyway, the vote is only open for those who live in Ward 2. If you have any questions about Ward 2, I'm happy to answer that. But anyway, I'm going to say all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those not in favor, say nay. Right? Blanking, sorry. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, welcome. Thank you, Charlie. And again, if anyone else is interested, happy to chat later, as well as happy to answer any emails for those of us, anyone who is joining online. Okay, so now our next meeting agenda item is hearing about the ballot initiative from Burlington Electrical Department with Darren Springer. Yeah.
Let's try that again. Whoa. Sorry. Darren Springer, I'm General Manager with Burlington Electric Department. I'm joined by my colleague Emily Stebbins-Wheelock, who is our CFO and Manager of Strategy and Innovation. We're here to talk to you tonight about the proposed ballot item, question number 1 on your November ballot, the Net Zero Energy and Grid Reliability Revenue Bond, which was passed and recommended unanimously by our Electric Commission and was put on the ballot unanimously as well by our City Council, for which we're grateful. So we're going to just run through a couple of slides. I think we have 5 or 6 slides, and we'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. And we're going to start off on the first slide talking just a little about what the revenue bond basics are, and Emily's going to kick us off.
Great, if you could go to the next. Thank you. So I'll just start with what is a revenue bond. A revenue bond is a form of borrowing. So the electric department is seeking the voters' approval to issue up to $20 million of revenue bonds. This would fund investments in our capital plan, which we'll cover on the next slide. Revenue bonds are backed by the revenues from the electric department. They're not backed by the full faith and credit of the city. They are repayable from Burlington Electric Department revenues only. They do not affect the property tax. They require approval of a majority of Burlington voters to issue. And the electric department has used this form of financing several times over the decades, starting in the early 80s to fund the construction of McNeil. We started up our energy efficiency utility with this financing mechanism. We used it to purchase the Winooski 1 hydro dam, for example. And most recently in 2022, we did an issuance of what we think of as the first tranche of a $20 million net zero energy bond. We'll talk about how we're using the proceeds of that bond, but we're here this November to ask for financing for a second tranche to fund our net zero capital plan.
Thanks, Emily. If we can go to the next slide. So back in December of 2021, Burlington voters approved with about 70% of the vote what was the first ever in the country for a public power utility net zero energy revenue bond, which was a $20 million bond. As Emily mentioned, it was the first of 2 planned bonds that we had to help us make progress on climate, to continue reliable distribution system for our electricity. We've spent through about $12.5 million of that $20 million over the several years since we issued the bond. We issued it in April of 2022. And we anticipate that either through the end of this fiscal year or maybe the next fiscal year, we'll spend through the rest of it. And so the new bond proposal is going to take us through the end of the decade. But just to kind of refresh everybody's memory about what the bond in 2022 was funding, we have in Burlington about a 65 megawatt peak electric use, and that's in the summertime. Our system was about 77 megawatts when we started with the bond. We've gotten it up to 80 megawatts now through the bond. And what this does is as we're moving more towards heat pumps, more towards geothermal heating and cooling, more towards electric vehicles, electric transit buses, this is going to provide the capacity on our electric grid to serve all of those new uses. We've also invested in our technology systems. We've invested in our renewable plants. We had a couple of big firsts, too, with this bond. We've got the first all-electric bucket truck in the entire state for our line crew. So if you see our orange bucket trucks around town, there's one that's a white and green bucket truck. That's the electric bucket truck running on 100% electricity. And then we also were able to put in the first modern fast charging stations for EVs through this bond. We have one at our office at 585 Pine Street. We have another that I think is going to be energized maybe as soon as the next couple of days over at the Marketplace Garage downtown. And we're going to have more of those coming as well. Next slide, please. There we go. Yep, there we go. So what is the new bond going to do? Well, we're going to continue with increasing the capacity on the grid. We will go from 80 megawatts to 90 megawatts. And we anticipate as Burlington uses more electricity for heating and for transportation, as we move away from fossil fuels, eventually the grid will need to be somewhere above 100 megawatts. But this will get us a good chunk of the way there. We'll continue with some of our technology system updates, but we'll make some other big steps on climate. Burlington Electric wants to lead by example with our own fleet. This will help us change 10 of our vehicles over to electric add an electric forklift, and add a second all-electric bucket truck for our line crew. And then a really exciting development, and this slide's actually out of date already. Just recently, we won almost $5 million in federal competitive funds to expand the EV charging network in Burlington. So here on the slide, it says we're going to have 88 new EV charging stations, but this bond now can serve as a match for the federal funds, and we can have 200 new EV charging stations in Burlington. 47 of those are going to be fast chargers. So we may go from having, just 2 fast chargers to having almost 50 as part of this bond. So we want to make Burlington one of the best places to charge an electric vehicle, have chargers everywhere all around town. I know we have a little bit of charging here at the community center in the back parking lot. Car share is a part of that too. We've helped to get a lot of car share vehicles to be electric and have charging for those. So we envision that we'll continue to support those programs as well. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do with the bond. And I'm going to hand it back to Emily to tell you a little more detail on a couple other key pieces, and then we're glad to answer your questions.
So the next slide is going to show a pie chart with the distribution of our spending plan for how we're going to spend the bond if approved. So as you can see, the lion's share, just about 80%, would go to our distribution system. That's what you think of as the grid, the poles, the wires, the transformers, the switches, and that would be adding that additional capacity that Darren talked about. Just about 9% investment in our renewable generation plants, some money for IT systems, as we mentioned, 4% for the fleet EVs and other general needs, and just a small portion on demand response and flex load management. So you can see most of this is really about reliability and expanding the capacity of our electric distribution system. If you go to the next slide, please. So here we've done an illustration of really to show the sort of the financing power that the bond brings. If we were to try to fund our capital plan and maintain the amount of cash that we need to have a good credit rating, looking ahead, just projecting our FY26 budget, if we had the bond, we'd be looking around like a 2% rate pressure. If we didn't have the bond and we still tried to do all of those things, it would be almost 13%. So this isn't a projection of like what rates will do. It just sort of shows the benefit, right, of having that access to capital at a good interest rate. And we are, of course, carefully watching the interest rate environment. As you probably all know, the Federal Reserve just cut rates 0.5%. More rate cuts are projected. So if the bond is approved this November, we'll be working with our financial advisors to figure out when to issue, and hopefully we can wait a good 9 months or maybe a year till rates fall even farther. We got a 3.5% rate on our last bond, and we'll be looking to be in that neighborhood if possible for the issuance of this new bond if approved. So I think with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thanks for bringing to life our ballot initiative opportunity. I'm Dawn Ellis, one of our Justice of the Peaces, and I've been spending some time really trying to understand how is our electric infrastructure doing, and is it ready to continue to take on the load of primary energy source, which also becomes, primary source for things like the basics. Heat. Certainly, communication has become more and more important as we go digital. You don't do as much on paper. So electric being one of these things where we may not realize it, but it's suddenly becoming at the nexus of a lot of what we do in our society. And so how are we doing with access and inclusion, and what are the barriers to it? And so some of the barriers that I've heard as I've been talking with people, as we move towards electric really taking on the big role, especially in the Queen City, we're the state of Vermont in that next level sort of way. As we take that on, Barriers include, as we move to electric vehicles, you know, the barrier of getting into the electric vehicle to start off with, they're more expensive. And if you don't itemize your taxes, it's hard to get the tax breaks that bring them back into play. So are we diversifying ways that people who don't itemize taxes can take advantage of the efficiencies of the electric vehicle revolution? I know we have some buses, and I know we have some public vehicles that are now doing that. But what about the everyday person and their bike and their vehicle, and what are we doing for being able to reduce the barrier to using the charging stations? So one of the things I've learned and have heard is you can't plug in and use a charging station unless it likes you, unless you've got the right card that is a membership card, that you've got the right type of plug-in for it, which varies over time because of planned obsolescence. We start to lose having the right match. So there's a whole set of things to, if we're moving into it, to avoid people putting money in the direction of electric and then suddenly being stranded. And so plugging in at the chargers, having access to vehicles that can plug in at the chargers, and then, in the wintertime, the batteries don't last as much. And that's true for things in the house as well as in transportation. So I hear about people who have moved to electric and then they find that their radius of travel has declined by at least a third in the wintertime. And so while we're in the city and we have lots of plugins, are we working to be in partnership with some of the other electric departments to ensure that those who travel to, say, Montpelier or to Middlebury or to Milton or to any of the places that involve work opportunities and life opportunities that our Burlington residents would want to travel to, that they can get there and back in their all-electric future. And I think that's one thing. I wonder if there are parts within this plan that are putting money towards reducing the barriers, and of course in the home themselves. There's a lot of wonderful technology out there, but if you don't have the money to put it in ahead of time, it's hard to get the rebate. And so have we got plans for helping people take advantage of those heat pumps and take advantage of the very efficient electric machines to reduce costs, but if you don't have the capital to be able to do that. So let me know what you've got.
That's a great question. It's a few questions, but let's dig in. Thanks, Don, for that. So on the first piece, in terms of just getting into an electric vehicle, we have our own rebates, and they are enhanced for our income-qualified customers, and they're for new and pre-owned electric vehicles. And with pre-owned electric vehicles, they're actually, because they've depreciated quite a bit because the technology is changing so fast, in some cases they're the cheapest vehicles on the market. But with new vehicles, they can be more expensive. The good news with the tax credit that you mentioned is it is available now in multiple different ways, including in some cases as a rebate at the point of sale, the federal credit. And if you're leasing a vehicle, a lot of the companies will put the federal credit directly in the lease because there were a lot of complications with the federal legislation, which vehicles count, which don't. If you're leasing, they all count. And so a lot of people are using the lease as a way to get that credit. But for Burlington Electric, we offer credits, rebates at the point of sale at a number of different area dealerships, and we give a larger rebate for our income qualified customers, and the state of Vermont's doing that too. So in some cases, if you qualify for the federal, the state, and the Burlington Electric rebates, you can get almost half off of a new vehicle, which is a great deal. Your point is right. I mean, when you're driving electric, it's cheaper per mile equivalent compared to gas. So there's not as much maintenance. There's a lot of benefits, but people need to be able to get in the vehicles. So we're doing what we can with the rebates to try to help. In terms of the charging, we're part of a program that the entire state is working on to have fast chargers at exits off of the highway every 50 miles. So we're hoping to have some of those here in Burlington, but they're going to be all throughout the state building out so that on a kind of a regular interval, you know that you can pull over and not just have one charger, because that one might be broken or it might be in use, but have a bank of chargers, 8 chargers, for example, so that you know you're going to be able to pull in and charge up for 15, 20 minutes, get back on the road. In terms of, just thinking about around town, we're looking at a variety of chargers too. So we're obviously helping if you have a home charger. We're helping with rental properties with charging. We also have just recently put in chargers on utility poles. We have a pilot where they actually drop down for on-street parking, so you don't have to have a kind of a big pedestal and take up a lot of space. Your point about how do you access them is a great point. There's a lot of apps. Depending on where you're traveling to, if you're going out of state, there can be a lot of different apps. There's one app called PlugShare that I've used. I drive an electric vehicle, and that one is sort of an umbrella that can kind of direct you to the different ones. But around town here, ChargePoint has been the main charging station that we use. And I used to sit in our office and look out the window when I didn't have an electric vehicle and see people pull up and they would, have their phone and they would charge the vehicle. I didn't know how it worked, so demystifying that process is, I think, really important for people. Because once you have the right app or the card, whatever it is, it gets a lot easier to be able to do this stuff. But there is a process. It's a learning process for anybody who's taking it on as a driver. You're right, in the wintertime, you can lose a little bit of range if you're using the heat. There are some tips and tricks that I've learned as a driver for how to extend the range. On the plus side, EVs are pretty good in the snow. A lot of the weight is down low in the vehicle because the battery tends to be heavy and down low in the vehicle. So I found that it handles pretty well in the snow, but it's a different experience than having a gasoline vehicle. So you're asking a lot of good questions. We're trying to address a number of those. And obviously, it's with EVs, it's a work in progress. We have a lot more work to do to make sure they're affordable, accessible, and that everybody knows what the benefits are and how to use them.
Before I let you ask another question, I just want to make sure, are there any other questions in the room to make sure everyone's getting access and space? Okay. Please remember your name and ward. Not you, just
Oh, Jacob, Ward 2, I think. You're talking about how we're expanding the capacity. It sounds like that's a mix of increasing our generation and increasing the capacity of the actual wires and switchgear on the. Is that right? Or is there any plans of getting more generation in the city? Or, yeah, can you expand on that?
So for this bond, we're mainly talking about the distribution system, the wires, the poles, the infrastructure that delivers the electricity. But you're absolutely right that we're going to need over time more renewable energy to serve what hopefully is a growing demand from heat pumps and EVs and other things. So in the city, solar and battery storage are the two resources that we can potentially build more of. And there's both at the kind of smaller scale and at the what we would consider utility scale, there's some interesting kind of ideas for where we can put more solar. We already have 10 megawatts of solar. We're actually most per capita east of the Mississippi of any city, according to Environment America. But we can definitely do more there. And we can also do a lot with battery storage, which doesn't take up as much of a physical footprint, but gives us different capabilities. When we look outside of the city, whether it's in Vermont or in New England, we're in the market for more renewable energy pretty frequently. We're generally looking at hydropower and wind. When we're in the market in New England. And there's a lot of competition right now. People want more renewable energy. It's getting tough to build in certain places. There's a lot of offshore wind that may be coming online over the next decade, but right now that's a little bit expensive too. So we're trying to be in the market at all times looking for good opportunities to buy renewable energy for our customers.
Anyone else? Do you have a question, Charlie? Okay.
So my question is, how does BED benefit other communities in the state of Vermont? Do you assist other communities? Do you make it easier for for instance, there's a lot of communities in Vermont that don't have the capacity, the financial capacity, the population to make advances in their net zero plans. So does Burlington Electric help any other communities in any way?
Well, we do. I mean, the thing that came to mind when you started mentioning that was first and foremost with mutual aid. I mean, a lot of times when there are storms in rural Vermont, you're going to have outages that are going to last 3-4 days a week. And in Burlington, we're fortunate because we have a compact geography. We have about half of our system is underground. The average customer doesn't see typically more than one unplanned outage a year for an hour or less. So our outages are very short duration, and a lot of times in rural Vermont, they're not. So a lot of times in the winter, particularly when we have a severe storm, we're sending our line crews out to do mutual aid assistance to different areas, whether it's central Vermont or and right now, we actually have a line crew down in South Carolina supporting recovery from Hurricane Helene, and maybe sending a crew down to support recovery with Milton that just hit in Florida, potentially. So that, I think of that first and foremost. But we do work with the other utilities that are doing work in the state, as well as Efficiency Vermont, because we provide efficiency services here and they provide them outside of Burlington. And so we do coordinate and collaborate a lot. We have some limitations on what we can do outside of Burlington because it's Burlington ratepayer money, so we can't spend it in other communities. But we can coordinate and collaborate and share good ideas and programs. We learn a lot from other utilities in the state and in the country, and sometimes we have an interesting idea and it catches on. One example is we were, I think, one of the first utilities to come up with an electric lawnmower incentive program, and that now has become one of our most popular programs, and now a lot of the utilities in Vermont have that. But I've seen programs that they've come up with that are pretty interesting that we try to copy too. So a lot of exchanges of ideas and things like that.
Amazing. Name and word.
Thanks, Trav Fryer, Ward 2. Is there any work being done in consolidating lines or moving lines underground? I was on Pine Street the other day and I noticed there's lines on both sides of the road, and I don't normally notice it, but it's actually a lot of sort of clutter in the sky. Is there anything happening to consolidate it?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, about half of our infrastructure is underground, and then when you see poles and wires, sometimes it's ours, sometimes it may be the telecom companies that have it, so it's different around the city. What we try to do, though, is when the city is doing a big street project, like the Great Streets Project downtown, for example, we typically look at undergrounding infrastructure. So if everything's being ripped up for a particular reason because they're redoing streets, we look at undergrounding. One of the interesting things is it's really good to underground in terms of your resilience from storms and weather. Our line crew has to be specially trained to work underground, and it is a little more dangerous in certain circumstances. And when there is an outage, it can be a lot more challenging to address it. So there's balancing factors. All things equal, I think underground tends to be better, and certainly aesthetically, I know people appreciate it as well. So that tends to be the way we do it, is we look at what projects are going on in the city, and if we're going to be relocating, we try to underground while we do that. So it's a bit of an incremental process.
Hi, Dawn Ellis again. Very interesting discussion going on, and electric being so important. Wanted to clarify, in the ballot initiative, there are no new or additional pieces that are going to address individual access. Is that correct? It's really not doing that. You're doing some things, but this ballot initiative doesn't include that. Is that right?
I want to say yes, but so yes, this is mainly about infrastructure. Obviously, charging stations, are supportive of access for EVs. But the but part of it is that by doing the bond, and we saw this with our first bond, we're creating more opportunity for us to offer those incentives that do impact individual customers, because we don't have to spend as much of our resource on the infrastructure. We're able to borrow money and use it that way. So there is some indirect benefit to BED's customers who are using the incentive programs because of the bond, where we're not competing those incentives against our infrastructure needs.
Okay, then the follow-up, I guess, is since there are different electric entities in the state approaching it differently, Are you looking at some of the other models of how to, inclusively move to the electric future, like the Green Mountain Power Energy Wall Initiative, where you've got battery power, storage capacity in the home itself, and that a whole wall, could hold books or it could hold energy. So that's one. Another is in some of the small towns like Bristol and some others, they have free energy charging stations, so that if you're not able to get the paid ones to work, you don't get stranded. Like you know where you can go to plug in and be able to keep rolling, period. Just models like that are about how do we make sure we don't leave a third of us behind when we move to investing in more electric as our primary energy utility.
Yeah, no, good questions. We're regulated by the state, and all the utilities are, but we have different models. We're a municipal utility. There's also rural cooperatives, and then Green Mountain Power is an investor-owned utility. And the way you're regulated does shape, to some extent, some of the investment strategies that you have, and also your service territory. So for Green Mountain Power, they're not free, but they offer incentives to put in a battery storage power wall at your home. In a lot of cases, the customer might have had a generator, for example, if they live in rural Vermont, or they might have had a greater concern about outages. We haven't had as much interest in Burlington in the Tesla Powerwall program because we're generally reliable and most customers don't have a generator, so there's not really a savings associated with like getting rid of a generator. So we really haven't seen a lot of that interest really from our customers. If there was interest, somebody was putting in a power wall, we would try to work with them, but we don't have a program for it just at the moment, whereas GMP is trying to make that investment, I think, because their service territory is different, their investment model is different. And in terms of the charging, we actually have, I think, one of the lowest charging rates for public stations anywhere in Vermont. You can charge for about the equivalent of $1.70 a gallon at our charging stations. If anyone is an EV driver and you go to Stowe, watch out. You're going to pay quite a bit to charge up in Stowe. So we have a really good rate. We're not allowed to give it away for free. The Public Utility Commission makes us charge a rate that recovers the cost because we're investing your money essentially in that charging station, and we don't know who's using the charging station. It might be a Burlingtonian, it might be somebody from outside of Burlington. So we have to charge a rate to recover some of the cost of serving the station with electricity and those types of things. One thing we are doing, though, that's kind of along the lines you're suggesting is we know some customers benefit from having a home charger, and they get a discounted rate by charging off-peak. They charge between 10 at night and noon the next day, and they get what's essentially the equivalent of about 90 cents a gallon of gas for those charging hours. If you're using one of those stations that are community stations for street parking where the charger drops down, we're working to set up a similar structure there so that if a Burlington resident is using that as their primary charging station, they want to use it off peak, they can get a discount. So we're trying to limit the distinction between somebody who has access to off-street parking and somebody who doesn't, as just kind of one of those types of initiatives to try to make it more equitable.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
Hello, my name is Albie. I'm a Ward 3 resident, and I'm a PhD student in electrical engineering. So there's been a lot of talk about EV charging tonight, and I think it's really great that there's so much focus on this future mode of transit, but for the vast majority of people, we don't have EVs, and EVs are really expensive. So I'm wondering, what other sort of uses of this bond investment are you looking for to reduce rates for customers, such as demand-side management and other things like that? Because I think that charging only benefits very few people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Emily, when she was going over the chart, there was a piece there around flexible load management. And I mentioned we competed and won a grant for EV charging. We also competed and won a grant for peak reduction initiatives and load control. It's called the Building Giants. There's an acronym that goes with that, but I'm not going to try to remember every piece of it. But basically, it's doing two things. It's helping any customer who has a heat pump installed we're going to have the capacity to put a device on the heat pump that will help us to, during peak periods, we can send a signal with the customer's permission, and we can lower the use just a little bit during peak periods. If we can get that on 1,000 heat pumps aggregated, that'll have a big impact in saving money for the utility, and customers who participate will provide a bill credit for them so that they get some benefit directly as well. That's part of the grant, and then we're also going to be working with businesses and commercial customers on load control at their facilities too. It's one of the things, if we can reduce peak usage, it saves everybody money. A big portion of what we're paying and what drives rates upwards is transmission costs at the regional level that we don't have a lot of control over. So anything we can do to reduce our use can reduce some of the burden that we share for running the regional grid. So that's just one example, and we'll have other programs, I think, in that space too. The only other thing I just want to mention, it's kind of on your point, kind of to a point that Don was mentioning earlier. We have a couple programs that we're rolling out now through state grants. One's called the Switch and Save program, where we're going to help in affordable housing switch out older water heaters to heat pump water heaters at either no cost or extremely low cost to the customer. We also have at the state level $20 million for electric panel upgrades. One of the barriers, I think, Don, maybe you touched on it a little bit, is, you know, if you want to put in a heat pump, or if you want to do induction cooking or a heat pump water heater at your home, sometimes you have to upgrade your panel, and there's not, that can be expensive, and there's not always good programs for that. So we do have some state funding now to help customers who are income qualified with upgrading their panels too. So if anyone is ever interested in any of these programs just on an individual basis, feel free to email us at efficiency@burlingtonelectric.com, or just go to our website, give us a call. We have an efficiency team that'll come out and work with you, provide technical assistance, offer advice and ideas. We do audits on homes, so we can tell you where there's opportunities to save money. Any of those types of things, you know, encourage you to reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us about this.
Thank
we
you.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Next up, I have too many mics in my hands now. Next up, we're going to be talking about another ballot initiative. City Councilor Milo Grant is going to be talking about the Police Oversight Committee.
Thank you. Is Jean on by any chance?
I am.
Hey. Can we see you? Are you hiding?
No, I mean, it's all up to y'all, apparently.
Well, I feel like you should kind of discuss the process, because you did a lot of heavy lifting in the committees that you were in.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I don't know if you want to wait for a picture, or if you want my disembodied voice to
I think we're
talk.
okay with your disembodied voice.
All right. Well, so those of us who've been around have known that this issue of police oversight, community oversight, has been with us for a while, and that includes a vote that took place in 2023 to create an independent community board for the investigatory functions, the discipline, the investigation, and discipline of officers accused of misconduct. That was defeated, although I have to say that Ward 2 actually, I think we came very close. The more people supported that initiative in Ward 2 than in any other ward. But during the course of that, there was a push to make sure that if it was defeated, that the initiative would not drop. And as a result, there was a joint committee of which I was a co-chair with Ben Travers. I was chairing the Charter Change Committee, and he the Ordinance Committee. And we co-chaired a joint committee that worked through a proposal that would, at its essence, would really codify the evolving powers that the police commission has over both the auditing and monitoring functions that they've got, which include just making sure how the department runs, as well as this investigation and disciplinary process. And what we did over the course of a year is develop a program that went to the city council, was actually proposed to be put on the ballot a year ago, December. That was taken off in January of this last year to give the police commission an opportunity to have comments and input. Whether that was a wise move or not, I do not know, but that's what we did. And as a result, we ended up getting that in June. We started dealing with it. No, I guess it was in may have been early May or very late April that we started picking this up and received the communication from the police commission. And we did this within the charter change committee that has myself as the chair, Sarah Carpenter as one of the members, and Tim Dougherty of the East District as the third member. And we worked through the comments of the commission this past spring, public comments, the police union's comments, and others, and brought forward a proposal which is basically what is on the ballot. What the council did is in full when it got the proposal was leave the details of an independent panel, which would be impaneled when there was a disagreement over the recommendations by the chief with the commission, and 2/3 of the commission decided that they wanted to have an independent body take a look at it. And the only thing that the council did, and what we still have in front of us, is the makeup of that 3 to 5 person panel and their qualifications and certain details related to that, which I can get into the weeds if need be. But that is sort of the process that we've gone through. So when you look at it, you could say that as a community, in the big sense, we've been debating this for, I don't know, 3-4 years, that we as a council have been looking at this issue since really the mid-spring of 2023 or the late spring of 2023, and have continued to do that and brought forward the proposal that is on the ballot. And I, for one, although it doesn't go far enough to go as far as I would like, am very, very supportive of it and think that it will be a big step forward from what we've got. Does that do it for you?
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll put myself on mute and call me when you need me.
Thank you. So I guess from my perspective, I do think everyone needs to vote for this, because we have to vote to move something forward. I wish it was more, but this is what we've got. Opposition to oversight and accountability continues to be really strong, regretfully. I did watch as many of these meetings as I could. I watched as much as I could stand at times. It was extremely emotional for me, having done a lot of work on the police commission. Just to give you a quick example, this is an example of the dramatic changes that occurred when I was serving and working with others on the police commission from 2020 to early 2023. When I first started, we did not see complaints in writing. We were simply told what the complaints were and that they were exonerated. We pushed to actually see the written complaints. We pushed to create a process that ensured that people would get confirmation that their complaints were received, and then confirmation that the disposition, they had been notified of the disposition of their complaint, and then a follow-up as to how they reacted to that, and other things. But that gives you a sense of some of the major things that we did and continued to push. In the absence of anything anything that had been pushed before, we were really pushing against the culture at the city government level and the culture within the department. And Town Meeting TV, if you go and you just do a search for police, the debate that they have will come up, which Councilor Bergman participated in. I was asked, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I think I continue to be extremely discouraged. And I think you should watch it. I think you should watch it to see how our chief and how the leader of the union feel about this process, how they're still convinced that this is not in the best interests of the department, and how they are still convinced that it will keep police officers from coming to our city. That's not our problem. If we embrace this more, I believe we could get more police officers willing to come to our city. I think we have to be really honest about the reputation of working in Burlington is not due to quote-unquote protests. It's not due to quote-unquote politics. There's real concerns about the culture in that department that still isn't being faced honestly. I also found that, and I'm not saying the union couldn't have, and I've stated this many times before, the union wanted to have input into this process. I'm not saying they couldn't, but I'm just saying having someone be the one to provide that input, who until very recently was part of an open case that was just settled for $215,000. That's more of our taxpayer money because the insurance company only wanted to do $140,000. So we had to cop up $75,000 from a special fund, and you all know where that money comes from, right? So plus the $20,000 deductible. The insurance company doesn't pay anything. We have everything. We have a deductible, and then we're asking to chip in more in order to get these things settled, and we still have another open suit. So I continue to be concerned. I continue to say that unless we see some serious cultural changes and unless we understand what oversight and accountability means and how we treat the people that we serve in the city of Burlington, especially the Central District. The Central District in the past has been over-policed and underserved, and I think like a lot of people know what that means. And then, of course, right now with the shortage of officers, I was just on the call with the mayor yesterday in the business community, people literally being told that, nope, we're not coming. So we have to think differently, and we have to encourage them to think differently, and we still need a strategic plan to address the reputation of the department. It needs to involve social media. It needs to involve positive community engagement, because as long as I've been talking about that, we still don't see that. We need to do the ABC 1, 2, 3, a basic posting of positions. Like, our positions don't post on major job sites. Why is that? So working with the new mayor on that, working with the senior public safety advisor, and some other things. The list goes on, but the list isn't changing. And so that's a really big concern of mine. I guess I'll leave it there, and if you have any questions, Councilor Bergman and I would be happy to answer them.
Yes, I'm coming.
All right, silly question. So what is exactly we're being asked to vote on?
essentially, to vote yes would be to move forward this idea of creating the independent panel that would come into play if there is a disagreement between a decision that the police chief has made and what the police commission feels. If they, so the police commission would receive a complaint, it would be looked into, the police department would have their investigation, they would make a decision, and then that information comes to the police commission, and then depending on the amount of investigation that the police commission has to do, there have been incidents where, okay, yep, we agree with that, or we want more information, we're not sure this may be the best way to handle it. So when those conflicts come into place, to create a body that would help adjudicate that. And that is the main thing, that this is moving forward, although that body and what it will actually, who would serve on that, that is still a major piece that's being argued about. I am very concerned where they kept reducing the number of people to be on that body because it reduces voices. That's part of the process. I continue to be concerned about what is looked at as being expertise. Councilor Bergman, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Jake, it's not a silly question, and the short form that's on the ballot gives you a bunch of details. But what you're voting on is to put in the charter that, first of all, that the police commission should represent the diverse nature of the city's constituent, including those from historically marginalized communities like ours, like the Black and Brown community. That's nowhere in the charter right now, and that's, in my mind, a really important thing. You would be embedding for the first time the authority of the commission to actually audit and monitor the department. Right now, it's got this vague thing that they were going to get managerial control, but that doesn't, it sort of like doesn't fit, because that it's not really, they never will be given micromanagement authority, but they will be given, now if we vote for this, just very clear direction that they have the right to audit and monitor the department. And what Milo was saying before, in terms of the information that the commission was getting and what they were not getting, this is a very important change in the authority of the commission. And it makes it very clear that the commissioners themselves can initiate regulation changes, and they've got to work with the chief. The chief has to work with them, and then if things don't work out, then they bring it to the council. So it really sets up the framework by which things can happen. It doesn't mean that they necessarily will happen like that, but it sets that up as well. And then, and most importantly, it just embeds in the charter, which is our like state law, that they've got the right to get information to be able to be sure that the decisions that are being made are reflective of what this community, what our community believes is proper and appropriate. And so there are a lot of details with that are part of the framework. But then I think Milo is right. Then there's a process for when there are fundamental disagreements that can occur and what can happen. And I think that we did a pretty good job of, I think a very good job, not a pretty good job, of listening to all the voices that were advising us, including the unions, who said, for example, that if that independent board makes a decision that it still is subject to the rights of appeal or grievances under the contract, which was a major change from the way that the other proposal that was voted down put it forth, because that said, if you don't like it, go to court. So there was a bunch of listening on that. So I think that in essence, a lot of what you're doing is voting to make it really clear what the power of this body, which we have had probably for over 100 years, the police commission, to oversee the department. And I hope that gives a little more detail without going into a line by line, which would be excruciating for us all.
I think what was interesting when I was on the commission, we were told a lot. That hasn't happened before. No one's ever done that before. No one's asked that before. Like that would happen over and over again, and we would be saying things like, "Well, we should have a right to certain information. We should have clarity as to exactly what happened." Viewing body cam footage, some of the rules around that changed. So we're moving forward. Not as forward as I would like. I would like the fact that the department won't support it is still so deeply concerning. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just think that it's very just concerning and disappointing.
Okay, so again, I'm Charlie G. And so if there's a disagreement between the police commission and the chief of police about a disciplinary action or disciplinary action, that it goes to a special panel or special board for a definitive decision.
Not exactly, Charlie. If I could just say, not exactly. And the reason I say that is because the commission itself has to, first of all, the commission itself has to vote 2/3, so 5 out of 7 members. And if there are less than 2/3, then changes have to make that decision that it would go to the board. It doesn't automatically if there's a disagreement. So, and that's a big safeguard for things just getting pushed in that direction.
Okay, so so some people are suggesting that commission, that extra board, needs to be set up ahead of time, because if it's not, then everything is going to become very confusing if it does go to that extent. So is it practical to set up who's going to be on that final deciding board ahead of time?
We are working through the qualifications right now. That it's in charter is a 3 to 5 member board, but the details are left to ordinance, and we are working through those. But the truth be told, this is where the charter change process actually works to have that be set up by the time that this would become law. Because this is not going to become law until, I can't conceive of it happening before April if it got adopted and then the legislature rubber stamped it or passed it and the governor then signed it. And generally these things do go into effect unless we're asking for it to go into effect sooner on July 1st. So we have got the time to set that up. And the way that we're looking at the appointment process is that the mayor and the city council president would be the ones to appoint that body. And so, yes, I think that this work would happen pretty quickly within the time frame, but before this thing would go into effect. And again, it actually doesn't happen until after a very big process has already happened internally. So, the chief, there has to be an allegation, a complaint. The chief has to be acting on it. They have to, depending on the nature or the severity of it, the commission might pass entirely, in which case the panel doesn't meet at all. Right, so there's got to, and the commission has to act formally to be able to activate this part of the process. So it's not sort of like a willy-nilly type of thing. So I think the short answer is, yeah, we'll get that, we'll get the bodies in place in time for them to be active when they're needed. I don't have any doubt about that.
Thank you.
I will just add that what we're doing is not unique. There are oversight and accountability bodies all over this country. They do take different forms, so we may not be doing exactly the same thing, but all over the country, people are doing this to make things better. It's not just the financial issues around lawsuits. It's about the goodwill in the community. Time and time again, officers and the department say that people don't want to work here because they don't feel appreciated by the community. Yet what steps are being taken to heal the harm that has been done? What steps are being taken for that outreach? I know people get sick of me if I keep talking about community engagement. We created positions, gave them money to do this, and it's still not happening. So there has to be the willingness to take ownership in what that department can do. You can't just say to people, you have to get in line and respect this department no matter what. That is just not what happens in the real world. They have to take some responsibility. You know, we received an email saying how they, and Councilor Shannon talked about it a little bit at our past meeting, but how they surveyed the recruits that are currently in the academy and how they had an opportunity to choose which departments they applied to in Vermont, and how overwhelming majority did not want to come to Burlington. And there was an expression of the concern of that, a concern about why this is happening, but nowhere in the letter does it say what they will do to help. And when you say that this is a partnership between the community and the department, which the department does say frequently, but you don't tell the community how the community can work in partnership with you for all our community safety, we still have this problem. We don't have the healing. We had protests because we had problems here. The fact that they still don't understand that and feel that people just got on a bandwagon. We had protests with specific asks around issues and incidents that happened here with our department. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Sweet. I'm going to pass you the mic so everyone can hear that.
I have a question from Andre. What is the process for selecting what community members would sit on this oversight board? Is there any public input or ways for the community to nominate members?
So that's a great question. And right now, those the proposal that came out of the ordinance committee, I actually voted against it because I didn't think that we were done, and I would have loved to have heard that proposal in that. There is still time to raise that. Is no, that there would be a selection by the mayor and the city council president. But I have to say that within that context, that people being nominated by members of the public is, I think, would be very important. And my fight right now, and why we're not done, and I'm not rolling over on this, is that the lived experience of people, as well as the professional experience of people, as Milo said, is not being valued. It was not valued by the majority, which was Joan Shannon and Becca McKnight Brown in the ordinance committee. So people who have experience in, mental health, in substance abuse prevention, what have you, in juvenile justice are not, are right now excluded from that list. So, so yes, I think that I definitely would love to hear that. And part of the issue is trying to get voices that call on us to, to open up the process for people to be involved in. So I would love to have an email sent to the council that says, could you consider this? And any of these, these other ideas. I think that when it comes to this panel, we're still trying to get to yes. I believe we can get there, but having people weigh in on something like that would be very helpful. And you could send me, if you didn't want to send it to the whole council, could send it to me and Milo. I've been the point on this particular issue, gbergman@burlingtonvt.gov. And I'd be happy to forward that and, and advocate and amplify that.
Yeah, it'll be really important. I'll just reiterate with my great frustration that there's just constant pushback on the concept of incorporating more voices in decisions throughout various things in the city, and especially this. And we still don't have the numbers that we need, I believe, to do the right thing. So elections matter, and hopefully everyone votes. And hopefully you won't be too tired from the November elections to vote in March, hint, hint. But it does need to be, I think that we had such a movement and everyone got burnt out. Everyone got burnt out. And I think we need to re-energize to take this over the line. Thank you.
Thank you. We have about, is this on? Yes, this is. We have about 1 more minute for any quick last minute questions. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay, going once, going twice. Okie doke. And there'll be emails if you guys want to follow up on any of these things. Moving on to our next and last agenda item, we're going to be hearing from our city councilors and also from our school board. I'm going to offer to have the school board folks go first, just since we just heard from you guys, so you guys can rest your voice for a minute. Yeah.
Now it's on. We definitely have a lot to think about, don't we, guys? So things are a little bit more cheerful in the school district, which is, I think pretty much everything's more cheerful though. Mostly what's going on is construction. And I'd like to think that's cheerful because it means progress. It means new stuff. Everybody likes new stuff. Also, everything is already pretty much paid for, so we're not talking about more money coming down the pike. Although the coming year is going to be pretty much the last hit to our taxes for paying the bond for the big build on, it's Institute Road technically, but we all know it as North Avenue also. That would be the tech center and the high school, which one of the cool things that just happened last week was the placing of the last big beam in the construction. And as much as, it's got 1.5 years before it's going to be done. Is it 1.5 years? Let me think about that. Oh my God, me and numbers. I'm an art teacher, so the numbers thing is not good for me. I don't know how many more months, but it's actually astounding how much is being done on a weekly basis. The other big projects that are going on, also the track is almost done, and that's been a long time coming. That needed to be done probably about 2 years ago, but it is almost complete. The other big project is probably some of you have noticed IAA has had lots of construction. For those of you that are parents of IAA students, they've been relocated into two different places, one being Sarah Holbrook Center for the pre-K, K, and the other kids, the kids up to 5th grade, are hanging out at St. Mark's on North Avenue. So busing, there's been a lot of logistical stuff going on with that school community that's had to be worked out. It's definitely had some bumps. I like to think that like things are settling in finally, but it wasn't easy, especially with Sarah Holbrook, because they abruptly, the Sarah Holbrook Center, I hate to be redundant, but they closed. There was not a lot, the district thought that they were gonna be in there for quite a few weeks leading up to the first day of school. It turned out they only had like 2 weeks because of turnover, like basically who we were having a lease with change, so we weren't able to actually physically get in the building and do a bunch of stuff. With that said, things finally are working out. But that also means, so for the entire school year, kids are not gonna be at the IAA building, but that also means that they're doing massive renovations over there. So in addition to a geothermal wells being, actually they're done drilling, which is great. They're doing a bunch of stuff to get the building into accessibility compliance, ADA compliant. As you probably know, it's a historic building. It's really old, and things like bathrooms weren't large enough. Things like, just a lot of little things that have been needed for a long time. And one of the great things about this project is the money was socked away a very long time ago. It was marked for capital improvements, of which eventually did not move forward because it involved using some of the grounds over at Champlain Elementary, somewhere else too. I can't remember. It was so long ago I can't even remember. But basically people were like, hey, you cannot destroy our garden and our playground to put, I think it was a pre-K program. In the end, pre-K is now at every single elementary school, which I am a big supporter of. It seemed a little not necessarily, I don't know, why would you want to separate all the pre-K kids into just one area and deal with all of the like, oh, I drop off one kid at this school and then I have to hightail it all the way down to Pine Street. I don't know what the thinking was behind that, but it didn't go through. And that money sat around for quite a while. So, and in addition to grants, and one of the companies that's working on this project actually is a local guy who graduated from BHS. Anyway, it was kind of cool to see him because my kid went to school with him. So IAA they are doing tons of stuff. A lot of it has to do with air quality. Eagle Bay Academy, if you haven't heard, there's now a new therapeutic small school out at Rock Point, formerly known as the Conference Center. 2 buildings basically got joined and renovated, including it has an elevator. The space is amazing. It's got a great little maker space. The views, there's like this one little reading nook that looks over Eagle Bay. It's gorgeous down there. But of course, there's always a hitch. They could not fix the small bridge that goes over the bike path from, on the peninsula. And that, I think it was a combination of, well, they didn't realize how extensive the project itself was going to be. I think they didn't realize that both sides were not bedrock. One side is actually sand. Different kinds of equipment or whatever were needed. Then there was so much flooding, all of that, those types of machinery and whatever, they got gobbled up and used, obviously, for emergency reasons. So that The bridge itself is not able to hold the kinds of equipment that would be needed to finish essentially the grounds, the landscaping, the paving, stuff about the parking lot. And I do believe that that has something to do with stormwater too. So they're kind of, there's a lot of clay down there, and there's definitely some stuff that they're trying to figure out as far as drainage. And yeah, when all that stuff freezes, it's not going to be fun. So, okay, so I talked about that. Eagle Bay Academy, IAA. Oh, and then the other big project is going to be happening at the airport. For those of you that maybe don't remember, in planning or getting feedback about the new tech center high school design, it was decided to relocate or establish a location for tech programming at the airport. So it has the potential to have 3 programs, and just recently the board approved hiring a construction manager for what they're calling right now the airport renovation. We know for sure that there's going to be advanced manufacturing happening in addition to the aviation program. It's right next door to Beta, or I don't know exactly how close. I shouldn't say right next door. It is very, very close to Beta and the Vermont Flight Academy. So that's going to start finally. That project also was one that we really lucked out. Senator Leahy hooked us up with a humongous grant, and the hope is that that's going to be done by the beginning of the 25-26 school year. Once again, I hate putting dates out there because I always feel like I jinx it, but you never know. Maybe it'll all work out perfectly. And we're about to go into budget season, which means it's a long process. Of course, we get numbers that are unchangeable, like how much health insurance is going to cost, the certain amounts that we have already agreed upon for different bargaining units, different unions, like they're already in a contract. Although there are going to be, we are in, negotiations have already begun for what will be the next contract, whether that's a year, 2 year, 3 year, remains to be seen. But we know there are certain amounts of money that we know that we have to include in the budget, and they are not, there's no wiggle room. And then there's, we got notice from the governor that we need to be incredibly prudent. From right out the gate, we know that we want to work towards a level, what they would call a level of it. You think I have my glasses on, don't you? 5 minutes? Green is 5? I should probably take questions, but so budget season stuff will be the next time those conversations are going to start. And I just want to put it out there that Burlington School District is hiring. They are looking for paraeducators. There are probably about 20 vacancies right now. And just to let you know, if you get that job, you will definitely get a raise next year. It's true.
Love that.
I can't say that about my job.
Okay, does anyone here have questions?
Yeah, I'd love to answer them.
My name is Lauren, North Ave. Is the high school project on schedule for the most part?
No.
Okay.
It's on its new schedule.
Okay.
It's delayed a semester. Okay. From the initial, it's a semester. So as of now, yeah. But it's still amazing. Okay? Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, next up are our city councilors.
If I could go first, Milo, that would then we'll make this, I'm going to make it quick. The big announcement that I've got is that we're going to be having a community paint day at 1 Intervale Avenue, which is that building which is in the intersection of North and Elmwood and Intervale that sets back, which has been tagged consistently. And we have gotten a city council initiative grant and matching grants from the GBIC, as well as tremendous community involvement, including the owner and all the businesses that are there to try to clean that building up. It's been a terrible eyesore for a long time. We're working with Vermont Paint on, and they've given us also donations to make this happen so that it's going to be much more tag proof. We're going to be having a beautiful mural with Nepalese artist engaged in it. And this is really an amazing, it seems to me, project which is supporting BIPOC business owner, small owner, the small businesses there, and our whole neighborhood. So it's a real credit, I think, to everybody. And a woman on Spring Street, Helen Reed, was vitally important in making this happen. And she's got about 25, maybe 30 community volunteers, but this is only going to really come to fruition if we have enough people to actually do the job. It's scheduled for, and here, this is the part where you write down, October 19th. It's a Saturday from 9 to 2. It's going to be right there. It'll be coordinated by somebody who does this around the city and the area. And if you want to get more information, Helen's email is hsreid@hotmail.com. But I think it will be a very uplifting piece to the ongoing wonder that is the Old North End. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I get to cross item 2 off my list. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the city has a new website. If we could put that up on the screen for a quick show and tell. So it has a refresh. The first thing I want to make people aware of is when you hover over the government tab, you will see the office of our mayor, Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. Mayor's updates and press releases is where you can see information. She's been really working hard to give people detailed information, especially around community safety and what's being done. And these are things that she puts in her emails and also in Front Porch Forum, but this area under updates and press releases is where you can find the information. It's kind of like you don't have to go through all the city council minutes in order to find stuff for the updates. And then the other link is the getting yourself added to subscribing to the mayor's email list. So if you're not on the mayor's email list, I highly recommend that. Under city council, you get the city council information, and then standing committees tells you which councilors are on which committee. And then the last thing I'll mention in the bottom left-hand corner is a new button that says agendas. Now, before we had a calendar which took us to Civic Clerk. The agendas button is now what takes you to Civic Clerk. It will default on the current day. You can click on previous days, and up at the top you can search for event categories. So if you wanted to just limit yourself to viewing city council meetings, you would check that box, and then only city council meetings would come up. You would click on the particular date you want to look at. You'll be able to see the minutes for those particular meetings, the agendas, as well as have a link to the recording if you actually want to watch it. I still strongly recommend reviewing the minutes of city council meetings. I am very much aware that not everyone has time to watch them all. I'm quite surprised that I can get through 6 hours of a meeting myself. But the minutes are a great way to stay informed, and maybe you'll end up watching a particular part of the minute. We are under-informed in our city, and it's a really big problem, and people are constantly being subject to misinformation, disinformation, and it's just important to know what's being discussed in the meetings. I want to let you know the next REIB committee meeting will be Tuesday, October 15th. That's next week. We will be talking about the work of the Reparations Task Force, and the REIB committee is also gathering information from the community about what the vision and goals of the department should be as we're looking at reorganizing that department. The Public Safety Committee, the next one will be October 24th. Normally it would have been on the 17th, but Councilor Newbeezer is on baby watch and Councilor Barlow will be out of town. So I want to make sure I have a quorum because that little one's already overdue. So we're going to be having that meeting on the 24th. Hope, as usual, to have some really informative information for you. I do recommend watching still the July 18th meeting. I think that was a really important meeting from the recruitment team at the police department, and so informative. People who've taken the time to watch it have learned a lot. So that's the July 18th Public Safety Committee meeting. And also there was a really great presentation about new programs that we're trying to get off the ground in the city called Prevent and CityLink. The last meeting was on September 19th. We had a very detailed update and presentation from Chief LaChance from the Burlington Fire Department. And what I really liked about that, well, first of all, I always love all the information. He is extremely informative and has data that really explains what's going on in the city. Once again, I remind people that the fire department has done some really heavy lifting, especially around dealing with the overdose crisis. People often forget that the emergency medical services is under the fire department. They've been thinking outside the box. They've been putting up a number of programs. And so he has a report on that and the data, but also the fire department has staffing issues. You don't hear a lot about that because they work on it. They're doing things out the box. They're using their social media. So they talk about how they are going after lateral transfers, that is trying to recruit people from other areas who've already started their careers in firefighting. It dramatically reduces, well, first of all, you don't have to have them go to an academy for the full time, but they have a plan to use social media to boost posts, to advertise, digital advertising and media that firefighters read. They produce their own in-house video, which talked about working in Burlington, working for that fire department, and also living in the city of Burlington, really highlighting the city of Burlington and what makes this city great. As much as we have going on right now, it is still a really beautiful place to live. So I give them a lot of credit there. And then there is also a presentation from the Burlington Police Department as well. And then you can watch me and Chief Murad argue a little bit if that's your thing. I personally enjoy it. Really, you should watch. You should. People don't believe me. You should watch. You should watch. Resolutions. A lot of questions about how we voted on some of the resolutions that were brought forth by the Democrats on the council. So what I have learned in my short time in the council is that resolutions don't always mean anything. They are very often like, ooh, we checked a box because we did a resolution. and the spirit of the resolution and even some of the things in the resolution don't get followed up on. Or if they get followed up on, for example, if you ask for data from the police department that says the resolution that the data will be provided, and then they say no, what does that really mean? Where are we, right? So I personally thought, especially around the cap, when you watch the recruitment meeting and you get details of what the challenges of the recruitment team, you will see that that cap doesn't mean anything. Like, we have a number right now. Did we lose me? Oh, I'm still here. We have a number now that we cannot reach. And so now we're going to say we're just going to not care about what the cap is, and suddenly that's going to make people apply. I think that's misleading people, and I think that it's not fact-based. There's no evidence of that in the absence of doing the other things that have been recommended, which is having a strategic plan to address the reputation of the department, having an ABC 1, 2, 3 basics of making sure that the jobs are listed in areas where people can see them, and making sure that what we're paying is listed correctly, etc. I just am deeply concerned about that when people say, oh, you know, if we get rid of the cap, people are going to apply. There's nothing, there's no proof of that. And people are so desperate for service in Burlington, I'm not at all comfortable with being in a position that I honestly feel misleads people. I supported the gun safety resolution because it got to a place where our mayor was comfortable with it. We all support a new police station. So to bring forth a resolution for a new police station, implying that nothing was already being done, that was another thing about some of these resolutions. It was implying that nothing was already being done, and that's not the case. The mayor is aware we need a new police station. The mayor has been working on that and has a vision for that. So to bring forth a resolution where you not only didn't ask the city councilors from the central district, the most affected district when it comes to the drug crisis and other things, and then not even to talk to the mayor ahead of time. So that's why you had recesses, that's why you had pulling it off an agenda, putting it on the next agenda, pulling it off again, putting it on the next agenda, and then again this week pulling it off, was because there was no conversation. There was no conversation. I think when we look at the memorial block, and I think when we look at talking about to area developers, I think we can be in a better situation than saying that we're going to sell the property and then rent it back and then only have a handful of people making that decision. I just don't think that was appropriate. So hopefully we will not see that again. The public safety hub, I believe the changes in it are to the point where I could support it. My main goal is that we really can't do a public safety hub until we have fixed the issue of access to the police station to the public. That has been identified as a major issue, and we need to have the repairs completed, which is being worked on, and then we need the staffing within the police station that can work with the public that goes to the police station. And then we can start to work on the hub in terms of, can we get maybe a space donated as opposed to building a space, because the finances are very tight. And I will leave it there and ask if there are any questions.
Are there any questions in the room right now?
For those of you who hung in.
Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you both so much for coming and talking to us all about this. It's really important. We
Thank
super
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
Now, oh, Jean, do you have something else you want to say?
Nope, just saying thank you.
Beautiful, awesome. Okay, then we're gonna do our door raffle prize and close out for the evening. Thank you all. Let's see who lives. Oh, it's blank piece of paper. That's great. Is Nate here? Yeah. Sweet. Okay, Nate, you win. Hooray. Okay, thank you all and have a good night.